Let's get talking. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. Y'all like the new poster here? Carl E. Long. Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. Hey guys, welcome. To my podcast. This is episode 41. Yes, I've done 41 episodes, and this is episode 41. Now today, guys, let's get right into it. The title of this episode is Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. The chaos continues. Trump has not slowed down. It's time to take action. It's time to take action, guys. Yep. So I've been away for a bit. The last podcast I did something different, did something on American Idols, took a little break, but all hell in a handbasket has just blown up here in America. And you would have to be either not looking at a TV of any sort or you just don't care. But there has been some things going on in this month right here, guys. And Donald Trump continues to destroy the very fabric of our nation. And it's getting really, really scary. It's getting really, really scary because here's a man who has learned how to try the courts. He has pushed the needle and he is becoming more successful with it because nobody's ever tried to do anything like this. So there is no precedent of what he's doing. So now he's got the Supreme Court in his back pocket, made a great ruling there. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill, which I call the biggest, ugliest bill of all time. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how people are feeling about Donald Trump and listen to a few of the people that are talking. And I'm going to keep talking about the Election Alliance group that has been doing all these audits on the swing states and a lot of these elections. And guys, the math just ain't mathing. And to this day, I have not seen not one of these stories on mainstream news. Roland Martin is the only podcaster that I've seen that has had the gumption or the will or the whatever. He's not afraid to talk about this. I mean, this is not voter fraud. This is election fraud. Election fraud. There is something going on here. And as much as I want to say this, but I'm going to say it right now, this election was stolen. It was stolen. There's no way around this, guys. And the facts are all pointing toward this. But why the Democrats are not talking? Because Trump has made election denial something and nobody wants to talk about it. But I'm sorry. We in America are going through hell and we want answers. So we'll talk a little bit about those studies there as well. So I want to start the podcast off by asking the question of how do you feel? How do you honestly feel about what's going on in America? I want to know how you feel. Get into these comments. I'll have clips and things. Get into the comments and let me know how you feel about what's going on. Because I cannot believe that any average American is sitting back and watching this happen, except for one sector. And I'll tell you why they feel the way they do. And I'll get some help from a TikToker here, two of them, about why we think that there is such a following and his base is so strong. Think about this, guys. The reason we are here is because there's a group of white Americans who feel like they have been left behind. They feel like they are being victimized. They feel like they are being oppressed. They feel like that the country is not being right for them. So therefore, they have picked up and gravitated to their leader, Donald J. Trump. That's the truth of the matter right there. That is the truth. They could care less about if he cut every tax or raised it. They could care less. He is still their leader. And that's the sad part about what's going on right now, because that takes us back to race in America. And until we have those conversations, nothing is going to be fixed. You can talk about the economy all you want. There's a small sector of people who care about that, but that's not what's happening right now. This is not normal times. It's just not. So listen to my first little TikToker explain the Trump supporter and why, in her assessment of why they are like they are. I totally agree with her, but let's listen and we'll talk about it. Here we go.
I've been dying to dig into this. I've been asking myself for years why Trump's followers can't see reality. So I did my research, and I'm going to share it with you. Let's talk about the psychology behind the Trump cult, because that's what it is. It's not a normal political movement anymore. It's a cult of personality. And if we want to fight it, we have to understand it. So let's break it down. First, Trump doesn't offer policies. He offers identity. He's not popular because of what he does, but because of what he represents. To many of his followers, he's the walking, talking middle finger to a system they believe has failed them. They see him as their guy, not because he's honest, not because he helps them, but because he talks like them, rages like them, and punches the people they've been told to blame for everything. In psychology, there's a term for this: identity fusion. It's when your personal identity becomes fused with your group or leader. That's why criticism of Trump feels like a personal attack to his supporters. It's not just he's being criticized, it's I'm being criticized. Second, he offers revenge, not solutions. He doesn't promise to fix healthcare or raise wages or protect your rights. He promises to go after them. Whether it's immigrants, the press, Black activists, LGBTQ people, liberals, college students, elites, anyone outside the tribe. That's classic authoritarianism. Give people a sense of law. Tell them who stole it, then promise to make them pay. And to some people, that rage, that promise of vengeance is more emotionally satisfying than actual policy. It doesn't fix their problems, but it feels like power. Third, people crave order, and Trump promises strength. When institutions fail, when you don't trust the media, the courts, elections, schools, you start to look for a savior, someone who says, only I can fix it. That's why Trump acts like a strong man. He creates the crisis, then sells himself as the only one tough enough to stop it. He's done that over and over and over again. He's not leading a movement. He's leading a dependency. Fourth, his followers are trapped in an information bubble. They don't just believe lies. They live inside them. Fox News, MAGA influencers, far-right churches, Trump's own app, Truth Social, it's a closed-loop ecosystem that tells them every day, the elites hate you, the media lies, only Trump tells the truth. This is called epistemic closure, when you no longer accept any outside information. It's cult logic. If Trump says it, it's true. If the world says otherwise, the world is lying. And then fifth, shame is too powerful, so they double down, just like Trump does. Some Trump supporters know deep down they've been conned. They've seen the cruelty, the corruption, the chaos, but they've already invested years of their identity into defending him. To walk away now would mean confronting shame, losing their community, admitting they were wrong. And that's terrifying to them, so instead, they dig in deeper. And finally, and this one matters, Trump makes them feel seen. He tells them, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. That line, it's emotional manipulation, but it works. Because for millions of people who feel ignored, dismissed, mocked by elites, Trump says, you matter. You're not crazy, they are. He gives them belonging. And in a country where loneliness is rising and inequality is everywhere, belonging is everything. So when people ask, why do people love him? Why would they follow him off a cliff? It's not just politics, it's psychology, it's identity, and it's fear. This is deliberate. Trump didn't create the cult. He just saw the cracks in our society and he weaponized them. But here's the thing. Not everyone in that cult is unreachable. Some are too far gone, but others are on the edge, quiet, doubting, hurting. We don't get them back with facts. We get them back by offering something Trump never will: real community, real care, and real solutions. Because people don't join cults when they're happy and secure. They join when they're scared, isolated, and desperate for meaning. So here's your call to action. Keep speaking truth, keep exposing the con, and when you can, offer people a way out that doesn't begin with shame, but with dignity. This fight isn't just about defeating Trump. It's about breaking the spell and building something better in its place. That's how we get them in. That's how we get them to abandon him. Let's do it.
Now, she's so right, because what happens, I mean, everything she said was just spot on. Spot on. This is a different kind of beast, guys. And no matter, you can give them all the truth that you want. I mean, I have dedicated this podcast to speaking the truth. But when I am approached by a Trump supporter, which they're always in my comments because, you know, I'm a bleeding liberal, and they find you, they really find you, and they're in your comments. But I always engage them. I say, well, tell me what would work for you. When I start to talk to them, they tend to like come in and they will discuss, and they stop the bashing and calling me names and all sorts of things. And then they try to, I was like, and then when I started speaking the truth, I was like, but you know, we could make this work. All we got to do is talk, you know. And then they get quiet and then they don't speak to me anymore. It just shows me that there is hope for them. There is hope. There is hope. And she is so right. You cannot hit them with the truth and fight them, because it's shame is going to hit them because they have allowed this man to dupe them. And so now, what do you do? What do you do? I'm in for this fight, guys, because our white Americans who are stuck with this, and it's mainly them, and there's a few of people of color in there as well. We have got to meet them at a different place with different tactics. Speak the truth, but reason with them. Present it to them in a way that they will accept it and understand. You're not trying to like demean them or anything like that. You're just trying to let them know, hey, we can work on this together. We don't have to fight like this. Do you know what I mean? So it is a different kind of a beast. And I look at all the guys, the congressmen who are just there. All of them are afraid of getting primaried by Trump. They're just afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid. And there has got to be a reasonable bone in their body. I mean, they're getting rid of USAA, where there are little starving African children, which all of us have seen those videos in the middle of the night. We used to help those kids, and they're dying for the sake of waste, fraud, and abuse that they don't even know what's there. If there's some place that we wanted to just like abuse and just overspend, that one would be the one, helping other people. But they sit there and they just listen to us debate, and they have no words for it. None. I just don't believe those people are that heartless. But this is what the fight that we have, guys. This is the fight that we have. And I'm finding it out more and more as I do this podcast as to how big this fight really is. It's huge. It's huge. And as you can see how Trump is just like destroying our whole country, we're just having to sit back because we have no power. We have no power. And it's really afraid. Now here's another lady, and that lady there, her name was, I can't think of her name now. I think it was, God was going to give you her name. She's a TikToker. And, yeah, Let me see what her name is, guys.
I've been dying to dig into this. I've been asking myself for years why Trump.
Okay, her name is Jane Converse 3. Jane Converse 3. She's on TikTok and she has great content. So you can follow her. Jane Converse, spelled just like the shoes, 3. And she's on TikTok, okay? Now here's another lady who's been talking about the white church, and she's been getting a lot of hate from her followers. So I think this is kind of long, so I may not listen to all of it, but we're going to listen to a little bit of it, and then we'll discuss. Here we go.
White churches have not just been supported by white supremacy, they have served as its headquarters. I know you don't want to hear that. They have taught white people that oppression is godly and that power belongs to us by divine right. After the civil rights movement, powerful white people, men, saw that their grip was slipping. Black people were winning court cases. Poor people were organizing. Women were demanding rights. How dare we? LGBTQ people were coming out of their closets, and the foundations of white male dominance were cracking. So they thought, what can we use that no one will question? In 1979, Jerry Falwell founded the Moral Majority. He said it was about championing family values. That was a lie. The real trigger was that the IRS had begun revoking tax exemptions for whites-only Christian schools. Those whites-only schools were created specifically to avoid integration. Falwell's own school, Liberty Christian Academy, was one of them. The platform of the Moral Majority ended up getting built around the issue of abortion. Although that wasn't the original plan, they basically test drove different topics to see which ones would resonate the most with the audience they needed to capture, which was white Americans, white Christian Americans. It had everything to do with maintaining the right to discriminate, yet still enjoy government benefits. This guy named Paul Weyrich, who was a conservative political strategist, he teamed up with Falwell to build a political base. He admitted that abortion had not really motivated white evangelicals until it became politically useful. Their real grievance was losing control over who could sit in their classrooms, walk into their churches, and live in their neighborhoods. Once they realized that abortion could mask their racial panic, they made that their headline issue. They built a movement that turned pulpits into propaganda platforms. Sunday services became political strategy sessions. That's illegal. You're not supposed to be able to do that at a church if you're getting tax exemption. Ministers told white families that their enemies were not the wealthy elites exploiting their labor. They were not the politicians cutting their wages and stealing their pensions. The churches pointed to the poor, the black, the brown, the queer, the immigrant. Those people are the ones that are taking food out of your children's plate. They told white people they were being persecuted every time they were asked to share. And yes, I understand what it means for me to say this out loud. I know what it means to say that the church, something which is so sacred to so many, has been a central engine of the immoral institution of white supremacy. I know this will upset people. The white church has stood on the wrong side of every fight for justice in this country. Every one. During slavery, it defended human ownership. During Jim Crow, it defended lynching and segregation. Christian church members attended lynchings and brought their children to steep them in that evil. During the civil rights movement, it defended denying benefits to black people. During the rise of Trump, it defended cruelty in the name of religious liberty, as if Trump has a clue. Some churches resisted, yes. There are liberal churches who have a strong history of being on the right side of these issues, but most didn't. Most chose comfort. Even now, White churches help elect leaders who lie, steal, incite violence. They wage war on education. They call justice wokeness as an insult. They are consuming a message that keeps them at the center with the elite in their minds. They choose white power over compassion, over empathy. One share shows you care about setting the record straight. Please share. Next time, I am going to talk about how Donald Trump did not hijack this system. He was groomed into it.
So, I just missed that whole little part there, so I'm just going to say it again. There have been, if you listen to her, you will know that she is a white lady and she's talking at her church about churches. I mean, they are telling us exactly what happened. Yep. They're telling us exactly what their churches do. There was a movement. There was a grooming. I mean, she just told us straight out. And what we're trying to do, guys, is we're trying to not fight with you. We're trying to find common ground so we can live together right in this country, in this world. And you got to own up to it. And we're doing everything we can to try to stop it. And y'all fight us and say that, we're delusional. None of this is happening. You have the same rights. Yeah, right. But if you see what's happening in our government right now, it is in full view. Full view. Yeah. Yes, it is. All right. So let's keep going. We're going to keep going. So this is the next thing is about, how Trump always, whenever he's pressed to do something like the tariffs or the negotiations with Gaza, the negotiations with Ukraine, he always says 2 weeks. I mean, he just dupes us so bad. And this man is walking around like a freaking king, flying in the Air Force One wherever he wants to, has everybody at his beck and call. He's made himself a king. And everybody is bowing to his will. Not as Democrats, but you Republicans, it's a sad sight. It's a sad sight. But listen to this 2 weeks montage that Trump does every time. Listen up.
I'll get to it in 2 weeks is one of Donald Trump's absolute favorite tactics. He literally uses it all the time. And most of the time, in fact, almost every time, when 2 weeks rolls around, Trump has either completely forgotten about whatever it was he promised in the first place, or, and I think this is more likely than the first one, he's hoping people have just moved on. That the news cycle is on to something else. Maybe something else he fabricated. Maybe just something else in general. I mean, he's already done this at least 10 times in the 6 months since he took office. 10 times.
We're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks, within 2 weeks.
I could answer that question better in 2 weeks.
I'll do this at some point over the next 2 weeks.
I'll announce it over the next 2 weeks.
I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now.
Trust President Putin. You know, in about 2 weeks. You can ask that question in 2 weeks, and we'll see. It'll be out in about less than 2 weeks, probably. We're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks, Maybe it's a tick. Maybe he read a marketing report that says people move on in the media. Who knows? But the point is, it's a tactic that Trump has used on almost every issue. From his fake timeline around Russia-Ukraine peace negotiations to his made-up timelines around big trade deals. Where are all those big trade deals, everyone? To his issuing visas for high-skilled immigrants. He claims it all is coming in just 2 weeks. Of course, it never does. And honestly, it's a bit maddening that this tactic can still spark headlines like all of the ones I read earlier. Because it's not new. He did the exact same thing throughout his first term in office.
We're going to be announcing something, I would say, over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks. We are coming out with that plan in 2 weeks. We'll be reporting back sometime over the next 2 weeks. You'll be seeing that over the next 2 weeks.
Over the next 2 weeks.
And it doesn't have to be today. It can be tomorrow. And it can be in 2 weeks from now.
Could be in 2 weeks from now. Could be in 2 weeks. Notice a pattern there? It's a big pattern.
I wonder if he even knows that he does that. Jen Psaki, that was Jen Psaki from MSNBC. Jen, you need to send him that clip. I wonder if he's seen that. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It must be some magical number. I'm sure he uses it in his business too. Check with me in 2 weeks. That's a push-off tactic, guys. That's just to get you out of his face. So 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, everything's going to be all right. Yeah. All right. So we're moving to the next topic, which is the Supreme Court ruling that just happened. And I cannot believe this at all. I really cannot believe this happened at all. So I'm going to let you listen to the first guy who talks about what has happened with this ruling from the Supreme Court. And we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Okay, here we go.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile. We thought the courts were supposed to be the last line of defense, the place where liberty stands tall even when presidents go rogue. But on Friday, in a 6-3 decision straight down party lines, the Supreme Court told us, nah, we good. They let Trump sneak his foot in the door to cancel birthright citizenship. And they dressed it up in legal jargon about equity and injunctions. Oh, but don't get distracted. The real target was always your rights, especially if you was born with brown skin, immigrant parents, or ancestors who came here in chains rather than visas. For a second, it looked like the lower courts might hold the line, right? 3 federal judges had already slapped Trump's executive orders down with nationwide injunctions, telling him loud and clear, you can't just rewrite the Constitution because you feel like it. Immigrant groups were celebrating. 22 states stood up in court. Even the appellate courts said, let this play out. Then SCOTUS slid in like a repo man in the night. Instead of ruling on whether Trump's executive order was flat out unconstitutional, which it was, they sidestepped it and went for the technical foul. Universal injunctions go too far. God damn it. Basically, the court said that judges can't stop Trump's policies for everyone. Only the people who specifically sued. So now we're playing legal whack-a-mole across 50 states while Trump rushes to implement a policy that directly contradicts 150 years of law. So what's at stake, right? Everything. Let me break this down plain and simple. Trump's executive order says, if your parents weren't here legally, or maybe they were here legally, but temporarily, you don't deserve citizenship. Are you serious? The 14th Amendment that was passed after the Civil War to make sure that Black folks were considered full human beings says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It don't say, except for immigrants. It don't say, only if your parents had papers. It says, all persons. A phrase so fucking inclusive, it slapped the face of Dred Scott and every slave master of the fucking Confederacy. So what Trump is really doing here is rewriting Reconstruction. The very laws meant to undo slavery. And the Supreme Court just handed him the pen. You thought Isengard was bad? You thought Voldemort was a problem? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's handpicked avatar, penned this majority opinion like it was a legal lullaby, with principles of equity, she says, while politely gutting the power of federal courts to stop executive tyranny. And while they didn't officially cancel birthright citizenship yet, make no mistake, they laid the legal groundwork to allow Trump to do it himself. In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she tried to hold the line, calling out how this decision disregards the long history of protection for non-parties. But her voice is now a lonely alarm in a house full of arsonists. This ain't about immigration. This is about control. It's about telling people of color, especially black, brown, or immigrant babies, that their existence is conditional. That if you ain't got the generational wealth, land deeds, or ancestors off the Mayflower, you're permanently under review. Today is birthright citizenship. Tomorrow is voting rights. Affirmative action, gone. Housing, gone. Education, you got it, gone. When does it stop? In the MAGA cult, they're going to keep smiling in your face, talking about this is what we voted for. This is what the founders wanted. Don't forget, y'all, the founders owned slaves. They're not playing. Trump told you on day one what he was coming for. And this court just gave him the green light to drive through your rights like a bulldozer in a graveyard. So don't wait on the Constitution to bleed before you speak up. Because if birthright citizenship can be reviewed, so can your freedom.
So there it is. So if you don't understand what he said there, his TikTok handle is Black Facts Matter, is basically a district judge. Now, I have to say this. Now, the Supreme Court may have given Trump this authority right now, but they also going to work for any other president going forward. So they don't know what they just did, to tell the truth, really. Because here's what happens, guys. If we want to get something done, like something through the courts, what we do now, Democrats and Republicans, they will go to a more liberal judge in a district. Like they might go to the New York district if it's a Democrat, and then the Republicans may go somewhere like in Kentucky or somewhere where they know they're going to get a more conservative judge that's going to give them grace or approve whatever they want to approve. It's a tactic they've used for years. And the district courts, whatever they decide, it automatically becomes that for the entire country. That's the way it works right now. But what they've done now, so for instance, if there's a district court that says that this person here is suing for abortion rights or something like that in a state, and they wanted to be able to do something that like a Planned Parenthood, I'm just making something up here, and they're in the state of Kansas, all right? So basically what used to happen, if a district judge made this decree, that would automatically be filtered all over the country. But now they're saying it can only happen to where and whom they are sued. That's it. So they have no jurisdiction on anything. This is not the way the courts have worked for many, many years. But now this is how they're going to work. So the district judges can no longer set an order that's going to affect the entire country. It just doesn't. So all of those things that we have gotten Trump stopped in different district courts, whatever, he can pretty much go back to appellate court and send them all through, and they'll all start up again. Yeah, that's where we are. The only thing that we had was the courts to stop him. And a lot of the court judges were fighting it. And thank God the district courts. And a lot of them were even Trump appointed judges that were stopping him. But now Supreme Court has made this messy. So basically they're saying if it wants to be nationwide, it has to come to us. And how long does it take for y'all to get to something, dear Supreme Court? And they're going to probably not hear a lot of things now because everything's going to be going to them because the district judges can't do anything anymore. Do you know what I mean? And then there's a way you can do it through a class action suit kind of way. There's ways around it. But this is going to bite them because when there's a Democrat in office and we need to use that, good luck because it's going to be used. You don't know what you've done. But right now to do it is very dangerous for Trump to have such power. His executive orders are just going to go through. This is so scary. Here's another TikToker, guys, talking about the Supreme Court ruling. Here we go.
The Supreme Court doesn't know what it's just done. Today, the Supreme Court ruled to limit the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, some of you might ask, how was this even brought about? Donald Trump has been signing executive order after executive order after executive order, many of which have come out to be flat out unconstitutional. And lower courts have been issuing nationwide injunctions to put a pause on these executive orders until everything is sorted out in court. Not too long ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order that would effectively end birthright citizenship. There was a nationwide injunction against it because it's flat out unconstitutional. And so Donald Trump took it up to the Supreme Court. And they did not argue about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. This case was merely about lower courts being able to put pauses on executive orders. So essentially, with the Supreme Court's ruling, Donald Trump can issue this executive order ending birthright citizenship, upend millions of Americans' lives until the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of upending birthright citizenship. So to my Republicans who may be jumping for joy over this, I want you to think about something. If a Democrat gets in office and they start signing a bunch of executive orders to flood the courts, as Donald Trump has been doing, and one of those executive orders says all guns in the United States of America must be banned, lower courts cannot put a pause on it. And if the courts are already full with a bunch of cases that may be unconstitutional, it's going to take time for that to get to the Supreme Court, doing damage to the American system and democracy. And so now Donald Trump can implement this executive order to upend birthright citizenship, and for the foreseeable future, until the Supreme Court actually rules on that very key portion, people's lives will be upended. Folks, this is how a dictatorship begins. This is how the great American experiment goes wrong. There will be massive negative implications for the Supreme Court's decision today.
All right, that's my boy, the Alphonse Angle. He's on TikTok too. The Alphonse, ANPHONSE Angle. I love his content as well. So y'all hear what he's saying? So basically, Donald Trump can come back in here and go with birthright citizenship. And what happens is the district court can't halt it until a ruling is made. So basically, until that thing gets to the Supreme Court, everybody he wants to deport, children who are born in this country, he can send them back because their parents weren't born here. Do y'all get that? He can do that. Because until the dear Supreme Court, who has made this traffic jam of stuff, they're so smart, that's what can happen with any executive order. Nothing can be stopped by a district court judge. Nothing. I mean, if they stop one, say, in one state, then the one that's affecting that person, they can stop it from happening to that person, but Donald Trump can go to another state and still be doing it, and it won't affect him. Do y'all get that? So that's what they've done. That's what they've done. Now, I wanted you to listen to Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'm just going to read it to you. Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent. And then I'm going to let you listen to Amy Coney Barrett's response to her dissent. She was just being downright evil. And she looks like the person I thought that she was. Everybody said that she's got Democratic, but she's no Democrat. No, she's trying to get back in Donald Trump's graces. So, and she led this bill. I mean, this ruling. She wrote it, authored it. So I'm going to read her Ketanji Brown's dissent, and then we'll come back and say here. So, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent in the Supreme Court ruling on nationwide injunction was a blistering critique of the majority's decision, which she viewed as a dangerous erosion of judicial authority and constitutional protections. Here's a summary of her key points. Existential threat to the rule of law. Bullet 1. Jackson warned that allowing the executive branch to continue enforcing policies deemed unconstitutional simply because not all affected parties have sued poses an existential threat to the rule of law. That makes sense to me. Point 2, criticism of majority's logic. She argued that the majority's reasoning, this is the majority of the Supreme Court justices, reasoning permits unlawful executive behavior and undermines the judiciary's role as a check on power. She wrote, executive lawlessness will flourish and our beloved constitutional republic will be no more. All right, point number 2. Point number 3, defense of universal injunctions. Jackson defended the use of nationwide injunctions as a necessary tool to prevent widespread harm from unconstitutional policies, especially when immediate relief is needed for vulnerable populations. Okay? And then tone and language. Next bullet. Her dissent was emotionally charged and deeply concerned. She described the ruling as destructive, perverse, and wrong, and said the court was so caught up in minutia that it misses the plot. Okay? She's basically calling them all out. And then constitutional value. Jackson emphasized that the Constitution was designed to prevent executive overreach and that the court's decision betrayed those principles by enabling unchecked presidential power. Yes, this will be studied for many, many years. Okay. Her dissent stood out not just for its legal arguments, but for the impassioned defense of democratic norms. Okay. That was her dissent on the ruling. Dissent is her disagreement. Okay. Since they didn't win. Now let's read Amy Coney Barrett's response. And this was like, they were into it. I'll read it to you. Justice Amy Coney Barrett authored the majority opinion in the Supreme Court's recent ruling on nationwide injunctions, which limited the power of district judges to block executive actions across the country. Her opinion directly addressed and sharply criticized Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent. Here's what Barrett wrote and how she framed her response. Point 1. Dismissal of Jackson's argument. Barrett said Jackson's dissent was at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. How? All right. Point 2. Critique of judicial overreach. She accused Jackson of embracing an imperial judiciary while decrying an imperial executive, suggesting Jackson's view gave courts too much unchecked power. No, it didn't. The courts only have one set of things. They don't write laws. They interpret the law. You're an equal branch of government, but there's certain things that you do, and this is what you do. You check the executive overreach. That's what you do. So she's trying to say that she's taking the power away from the executive and giving it to the judicial. No, you are equal parts of government. Equal. Your part is to check the executive. That's what you do. Amy Coney Barrett. Next, legal foundation. Barrett emphasized that universal injunctions were not historically part of federal court practice and argued that the Judiciary Act of 1789 did not authorize such sweeping remedies. I don't know that act. I got to read it. Okay. Tone and tension. Barrett's rebuke was unusually pointed. She wrote, Justice Jackson would do well to heal her own admonition. Everyone from the president on down is bound by law. That goes for judges too. What the hell does that mean? Y'all are the law. She don't need to be a justice. I'm sorry. Summary of disagreement. Barrett argued that Jackson's position lacked doctrinal grounding and amounted to a startling line of attack that mischaracterized the role of the judiciary. How do you know? Do you know what the justices are supposed to do, Amy Coney Barrett? You are not supposed to go sit there and do everything that Donald Trump wants you to do. That's not the way it works. This is not overreaching. The exchange between the two justices has been described as one of the most intense ideological clashes of the term, with Barrett's opinion seen as a full-throated defense. Okay, I don't care what she says, but the way she came at Kajandi, they called her Karen for the way she said that. So she's gotten herself back into Donald Trump's good graces. I see there. Wow. All right, so let's listen to a little bit of Ari Melber on the Supreme Court ruling, then we'll move to another subject. So here we go with Ari Melber from MSNBC.
These nationwide injunctions.
What I've seen does look like a victory for the Trump administration.
It is just the idea of this power of the executive branch that really is at issue here.
This is the ball game for President Trump's agenda, because we know more than any modern president, he loves to govern through executive action.
The big news coming in there. Now, President Trump has faced many court losses and setbacks among judges, district court judges, appeals court judges around the country. It's led to the freezes and the national injunctions against Trump policies where judges found them likely illegal. And headlines like the one you see on your screen and that have really been a regular part of this Trump era. Indeed, it's common across Trump's first 160 days or so that he has bluntly tested how far he can go. And thus, as you see from the voluminous number of red X's there, he's gotten more smackdowns than other presidents in both parties. That is what we've been living through in the courts. And now, in response to those very court losses, Republicans on the high court just gave Trump this unusual win, limiting lower court judges on how and when they can pause a presidential policy, even when judges, or ultimately the Supreme Court, find that policy is illegal. Typically, lower courts say that it's likely illegal, and they have a measurement for that, and ultimately, if it goes all the way up there, the Supreme Court rules on it. And so things that are likely illegal are paused in the meantime. That makes sense, because you don't want people to get away with the court's slow process to do the illegal thing for a year or two before they finally catch up with it at the high court. So that's just describing this in plain English. But this new decision, which came down from the Supreme Court Friday, changes the standard rules which govern the president, which governed Trump, which governed Biden before him. And that's why, before I get into any other details, I'll just tell you up top, it's another sign of how this MAGA-friendly court, with Republican and Trump-appointed justices, will blatantly change rules and even make up new rules for Trump's benefit. And then consider this. I'm not going to read a ton of quotes from this ruling, just a few, but even the Republican justices who just changed the rules for Trump acknowledge how a president like Trump can be caught pushing unlawful policies. So it's Trump appointee Amy Coney Barrett who wrote this new ruling Friday, noting in the ruling that when a court concludes the president has acted unlawfully, the answer is still not for the court to exceed its power to. Barrett using the decision to make up new rules for what exceeds power means. Before Friday, I'll just tell it to you straight, judges routinely issued these national freezes on presidential policies when they found the policy was likely to be deemed illegal. Barrett herself and her colleagues routinely oversaw that approach. They're a part of the thing that they now say suddenly exceeds power because of their new rules for Trump. Now they claim that this new made-up rule is the better way to go. And so their past approach, by their own definition, exceeded the power allowed under the new rule they made up. Now, if Barrett or Justice Roberts cared about logic or being consistent and having a legal reputation that was credible, they'd be able to see that that looks really illogical and inconsistent, what non-lawyers would call being a total hypocrite. And critics say these masks of nonpartisanship, the things we hear about the independent court, have clearly fallen. Critics say this MAGA court will, as we saw Friday, risk professional embarrassment, looking bad, hypocritical, if it just helps Trump get any extra leeway to do what he wants. And those critiques have come from legal experts, from constitutional scholars, from elected Democrats, and the dissenters in this decision. Take Justices Jackson and Sotomayor, who dissented to this Friday ruling, while noting the majority's approach is an attack on our system of law itself, an existential threat to the rule of law. Those are the strongest types of objections you get from lawyers. And I know we live in an era of hot takes and the internet and TikTok and everybody saying everything, but those are lawyers turned judges, of course, when they put on the robes, speaking as sweepingly as lawyers ever do, because they talk in a certain way and judges talk in a certain way. So when they say this is bigger than this case, we're talking about the whole rule of law itself in this country at this time, dealing with this president who's putting Marines in the streets and clashing over the National Guard. Well, you could believe their warnings or not. Now, when this news came down Friday, there were plenty of legal experts and journalists who noted that the MAGA majority's new help for Trump is sweeping. This isn't bound to the topic of this case, immigration debates. And that's a topic in this case in the definition of citizenship where Trump has already lost several rounds in the lower courts. This would affect everything, will affect everything, as long as we have this limit on what courts can do. Now, in those lower courts, Trump's lawyers have been trying to toss, ignore, and rewrite the original.
All right, so I'm going to stop, Eric, because that goes on for 10 minutes. But do you see how fuddled this is? They've made decisions they don't even know how to manage. How are you going to manage it? Because there are many times when they will get something sent to the Supreme Court and they will send it back down to the district court to continue. They don't want to read on it. So what are you going to do now? You can't send anything back anywhere. You need to make a ruling. If someone gets it to a point where it gets to the Supreme Court, you have to make a ruling. There's no more sending anything back down to the district courts. I mean, this is like, when did the Supreme Court, I always thought if they were impartial enough, but they never are. They are just as political as everybody else. It's split. Every now and then they'll go all together, but when it becomes political, they go into their tribal corners like everybody else. So there's no hope for that. No hope for that, guys, at all. All right, so that's all that on the Supreme Court ruling. Now let's talk about our favorite thing, the big booty bill, which Trump calls the beautiful big bill, the big beautiful bill. This, guys, is a mess. I just want to give you a few things that are in this bill so that you know what is in this bill. Did I put that on here? I believe I did. Let's see. This is really very, very scary. I don't know that I put that in here. The big, all the things on the bill. All right, let me just talk about it. So basically, there's a lot of stuff that's in this bill. I will let my Dara Tucker tell us about what's in the bill, and Politics Girl will tell you what's in the bill here. So here you go.
I have been lying to you. That is the feedback I keep getting from right-wing and MAGA commentators in my socials. They call me a whiny, crazy Karen, a nut job that should be locked up. They say I'm deranged and bullshitting and an uninformed liar, that people aren't going to lose their health care, that the only people who won't get Medicaid when the big, beautiful bill passes are illegal immigrants and all those able-bodied Americans who have been living off it without getting a job. No children are going to lose their health insurance, no elderly, no disabled people, no single parents already working 3 jobs, that it is me who has lost her grip on reality. And if I am scared and unhappy, then that must mean it is an awesome bill. Okay, it's an awesome bill. So then why did Republican Senator Josh Hawley say this?
Half of the hospitals in my state are rural. So, I mean, that's a huge number. We've already lost a bunch of rural hospitals. And what leadership told me over and over is we're working on a fix for rural hospitals. I don't see anything in there to that effect. Nothing.
I mean, he still voted for the bill, but he knows it's going to fuck people over. Why did Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski say it was agonizing to vote for this bill, but that she hopes that the House is going to look at this and recognize that we're not there yet? She voted for it too, after threatening not to because she knew how bad it was going to be, but then getting some favors put into the bill for her state alone, just so they won't suffer quite as much. Now she's kind of hoping that the House will stop the bill because she knows how bad it's going to be. At least Republican Senator Tom Tillis was brave enough to vote against it, saying,
"So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years? When President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there."
Even the far right's favorite billionaire, Elon Musk, has been screaming about how bad this bill is. Elon Musk, the man who bankrolled the president and had full access to our government. He said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." And Republican Senator Rand Paul backed that up with his vote and his tweet. Senator Paul might not care about what gets cut, but he sure cares about what gets added, particularly to the national debt. He said, "I wasn't looking for favors. I wasn't horse trading. I was fighting for the American people and against our out-of-control debt. I offered my vote for fiscal sanity. Congress chose to sell out the taxpayers instead." So blaming me for lying because the truth is awful might make you feel good, but it will not help. You can call me names, think I'm an idiot, or even want me to get hurt. But I still want Americans, and that includes you and your family, not to suffer because of this bill. So unless you are a billionaire, you will be negatively affected by this bill that is anything but beautiful. And that is true whether you believe me or not.
All right. That was Politics Girl. Yes, I love her. And I'm so proud of her because she ended up being a CNN commentator during the election. But she's telling you about what's going on with this bill, guys. This bill is not good. It's already been passed. So there's nothing we can do about it. And they met Trump's deadline of July the 4th. So listen to Dara Star Tucker on the bill as well.
So, were you invited to the Bezos wedding in Venice? Because I wasn't. Maybe my invite got lost in the mail. I don't know. So, okay, we were not invited to the Jeff Bezos wedding, which means that we will be hurt by this budget bill that just passed in the Senate. Because this bill was not written with any of us in mind. It was written to give multimillionaires and billionaires massive tax breaks. That's it. And guess who cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate? Ed himself, J.D. Vance. And now it's headed to the House of Representatives for a final vote. Donald Trump set an arbitrary deadline of July 4th for Congress to get this bill on his desk for him to sign. And he created this rush schedule because the bill is so horrible. And he knew that if he rushed it, most people would not get the chance to see what was in it before he signed it into law. And that's because what's in it is atrocious. I mean, they are making so many cuts to Medicaid that an estimated 12 to 18 million people will lose health coverage. Keep in mind, Medicaid is for low-income and disabled people. They're slashing SNAP or food stamp benefits because, I don't know, screw those hungry people, I guess. They're rolling back a bunch of environmental regulations. And on top of all of this, these so-called conservatives will be adding $3.3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. How is that fiscal conservatism? I really need to understand. But you know what they did find money for? $46.5 billion for border wall construction, $45 billion for detention centers for migrants, and $30 billion for more customs enforcement agents. What is beautiful about this? Who thinks this is beautiful? Call your representative. Call them at 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121 and tell them to vote no on this big booty bill. Oh, and bonus points if you live in Western Pennsylvania, Fresno County, California, or Orange County, California. We think that those congresspeople might be on the line and may be willing to defect. If we get 4 of them to switch sides, this bill does not pass. Call them today.
Unfortunately, nothing worked. They all caved. The bill passed. The big booty bill passed. It passed. Yep. With all of its crap in there. All right. So, let's listen to another one of my favorite TikTokers about one particular congressman and the bill. This one's funny. Listen up.
I have to tell you about my new favorite member of Congress because he's one of the 4 who refused to vote for the big, beautiful bill. And you're going to love why. His name is Andrew Clyde of Georgia. He originally voted for the bill when it was in the House the first time. After going through the Senate and coming back to the House, he cannot vote for it. Is it because the $3.3 trillion in debt it would add is just too much? Is it because he had a sudden change of heart and realized that cutting $1 trillion from Medicaid is just too much to handle? No, none of those things. It's because Andrew Clyde's pet provision in the bill that passed in May was the measure to eliminate a tax on silencers. This is why he supported the bill in the first place. So like a reasonable person, I saw this and thought, who is this guy? Obviously, he's a Republican, an American politician, and a store owner. And there he is. That's the guy who doesn't care about $3.3 trillion in deficit spending, who doesn't care about $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts, and who doesn't care about kicking children off of food stamps. What he cares about is that his customers have to pay a tax on silencers, and Mike Johnson couldn't get rid of it for him. When you think that there is something more to Republicans, you're always wrong.
All right, so here's what he didn't say, because he couldn't say, because on TikTok, it's you'll get banned. This particular congressman only voted for the bill because he wanted to make sure that they did not do any tax cuts to his gun store owner. Silencers. So that's all he cared about. I don't care about the people or the Medicare, if having people going to be kicked off of Medicaid. He didn't care about any of that. All he cared about was making sure that his gun silencer business, gun store owner, was not affected by these taxes. That's all he cared about. And just like he said, just when you think Republicans are going to do the right thing, then they're not. Very interesting, guys. Very interesting on that one. That was funny. All right, so now here's my girl, Joy. Now, as y'all know, I'm doing this podcast. The bill was already passed, so I'm doing this podcast after it passed, but I want you to listen to how everybody was trying their best to stop this thing. Now, here's Jasmine, who gives us a play-by-play. Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas, my Congresswoman from the Texas 30. And what she was giving us a play-by-play of what was happening. And let's take a listen to this.
So, of course, I'm sure y'all have all watched what's going on with Diddy, but there are some other things that are going on in the country right now. And so I am at work. I was not supposed to be here this week, but that's okay. I'm here. I'm here for the people. And so we've had a series of votes. All of the votes that we've had thus far have taken longer than they are supposed to take. All right. So I am in a phone booth, kind of. Let me show y'all. It's this old school setup. Did y'all see it? Did y'all see the phone? Yeah. So it's the old school setup that we have back here. I am right off the floor. So yes, I am still working. And basically, you know, you used to could take phone calls on these. I don't think these things work. They may work. I don't really know. Now we come in here with our cell phones and our laptops. Like I've got my laptop here, and we've been waiting. So people had to fly all night. Some people had to drive all night to get here so that we could deal with this dumb bill. The way that this works is that the Senate sent us a version of this bill that was worse than what the House sent out, which for me, I just could not imagine that it was going to get worse. All right. So they sent it. We saw, you know, Murkowski is getting dragged for filth because of her vote. But the reality is that it wasn't just Murkowski. It's just that people believed that Murkowski would actually hold the line. But instead, what she did is she negotiated for things to not take place in her own state of Alaska. Because she knows it's bad. Because if this is all good, if this is what Republicans want, then why would you want a cutout or an exception for your state, right? So here's another one of my friends. Say hi, Sheila.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
All right, see,
we can go back to their offices.
Oh, are y'all hearing that? That's the update. Did you just hear that? They're saying that we can go to our offices. All right. So this is, listen, these are the people that take care of us. I'm not going to put her on camera because I don't want randoms blowing her spot up, okay? But they tell us what to do. So I'm going to finish this and then I'm going to jump off live because I want y'all to understand the process. So we sent a House bill over The Senate said, no, we want to do our own version. The Senate did their version. They sent it back. Murkowski claims that she plans on the House fixing it. We don't fix nothing over here, okay? All right, so they sent it back. The only way that it now gets to his desk so he can sign it into law is if there's no changes. So the fact that they want to sit up here and drag this out, and we've had all these votes that remain open. Now, I think they finally have made it here based on the votes, okay? They finally got here from all over the country. Some people were actually in other parts of the world, right? So everybody finally made it back to DC. There is nothing to talk about. Either y'all gonna take it or you're not. But like delaying like the inevitable is absolutely diabolical. But that's exactly what they're doing. So typically our first vote on something is open for 15 minutes. We've been sitting here for like 2 hours on votes. Some of the stuff is just supposed to be like 5-minute votes. And we're sitting here for hours waiting on them. Listen, you either are going to put your big girl and big boy panties on and try to sell the American people a pipe dream like he did to get into the White House and see how that works out for you in your reelection, or you can decide to say that you're going to stand on business. And right now, the only one that's been standing on business in the House has been Thomas Massie. And this isn't to say that I agree with Thomas Massie. I don't want y'all to get that twisted. But the reality is that Thomas Massie says that he is a fiscal conservative. That is what he says. All of them say that they're fiscal conservatives. The only people voting for this bill literally don't even know what conservative means. Like, you literally are going to run up our national debt, and we have nothing to show for it. It just means that Bezos gonna have his next wedding with whoever his next wife is, and he gonna have probably the ability to spend $100 million and not feel it. That is the difference. Yesterday, I went into the Rules Committee. I testified. I had 8 total amendments. One of my amendments was very simple, the one that I spent the most time talking about, which was basically this cannot go into effect to the extent that we are going to institute these tax cuts on behalf of the wealthiest in this country, which we only have 83 billionaires, okay? Until we raise the minimum wage. And I didn't even ask for I asked for $15. Minimum wage has not gone up in about 15 or more years. I was asking for $15. So if y'all say federal minimum wage goes up to $15, then y'all can go ahead and get your tax cuts. Let me get a little bit more granular on these tax cuts. So there is a wealth transfer tax that we have in this country. It's like an air tax, right? So let's say Granny dies, Granny got a few coins, Granny passes her stuff on. Typically, you get a tax on whatever the value of that estate is. One of the things that hasn't been highlighted is that they said, no, we think that's wrong. Do not ever tax people on the transfer of their wealth. All right, cool. You're not going to tax them. Whatever. Let me tell y'all about the limitation that they was like, that's just too much. If you transfer less than $15 million worth of assets, you will not be taxed. Now, they're going to reduce that cap in a minute. It'll be reduced maybe in 2026 to, I think, 7 million. So long as you're passing along anywhere between 7 and 15 million and everything below, you won't get taxed on it. But this game that they like to play on, oh, we're helping out, the working class, tax on tips. Maximum of $30,000, and it's only for 3 years. Listen, institute those same maximums for everybody else. And I bet you could get some bipartisanship up in here. But, it's a game. So I'm just asking y'all not to be fooled. And I know that y'all are watching Diddy and everybody waiting to see, prosecution overreached, in my opinion. But that's just my little legal opinion. And you lose credibility. The one thing you always want to walk into a jury with is credibility. And so I think that because they pushed a little too much, they ended up losing credibility on other things. So y'all can still watch Diddy. I'm going to need y'all to walk and chew gum, okay? So I need y'all paying attention. They just finally said that we could walk away. It's 3 o'clock here in D.C. I had to be on the floor and do my first votes at 9. I've done a total of I've done a total of 3 votes. My third vote is still open. Been here since 9 a.m., y'all. yeah, this is not efficient for all of those that care about efficiency. And basically, I'm sure that they have pulled together their best Fox News spinners to try to figure out how these people that aren't in seats that either Harris won or that Biden won, how they are going to win their re-elections with the type of harm they are going to inflict, because justifying it by saying that 82 people in this country are running y'all is wild. Is absolutely wild. So anyway, God bless. I will keep y'all posted, but I wanted to give y'all a live update as I am literally sitting off the floor. But now they said that I can go back to my office, which means that Trump is still twisting arms and trying to convince them that this is good. I mean, it's good for him and his homies like everything else, just like them tariffs. Them tariffs ain't worked out well for nobody, but I don't even know who, right? I was gonna say his homies, but I don't even think we'll say that the war worked out really well for them, or him dropping bombs, because Elon has the vast majority of his money in defense, and a lot of his homies have defense contracts, so that worked out well. At the same time that children in this country, it only costs $10 a day to ensure that they have health care that they need, our sick kiddos, right? They want to rip that away. Or the $6 a day that we spend to feed them, they want to rip that away. So in the immortal words of Tupac, they got money for war, but they ain't got money to feed the poor. All right, peace out. I'll keep y'all updated.
That's my girl Jasmine. She just tells us the raw deals and she breaks it down so that any American understand. So again, all this was filmed or recorded or clipped before the big beautiful bill, the booty bill as I'm calling it too, was approved. It was approved, guys. It's going to do some massive changes to things. It's going to really mess up some things, guys. It is. And I'm sorry. I am really sorry as to what's in this bill. And yeah, it's going to be scary. It really is going to be scary. Oh well. All right. So, let's move on to something that happened here. Let's just read this to you here. Paramount, guys. Paramount Pictures has a Paramount Corporation Pictures, or Paramount Motion Pictures Corporation has agreed to pay Trump $16 million to settle Trump's CBS 60-minute lawsuit. President Trump has filed a $20 billion lawsuit claiming a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris was manipulated to show her in a flattering light. Trump alleged the news interview was election-based, favored. So here's the deal. Paramount is trying to get into this merger, and they didn't want to deal with this, so they decided to just give him $16 million for something that should not even be. This is how he plays the courts, guys, and he got $16 million out of it. $16 million for nothing. And they didn't want to fight it. They didn't want to fight it. So I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So let me give you a little bit of the details. So Paramount decided to buy peace with the president rather than wage a costly fight to defend 60 Minutes and its journalists in court. The move prompted an outcry by First Amendment experts who denounced the lawsuit as frivolous and the talks to reach a settlement as a shakedown. The company's leadership hoped the settlement would clear a path for the company's sale to David Ellison's Skydance Media, a deal that needs to be the blessing of the Federal Communications. Instead of fast-tracking the review to the proposed Paramount Skydance merger, the Trump-appointed FCC chairman opened an inquiry into whether edits to the October 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris rose to levels of distortion. The company has agreed that in the future, 60 Minutes will release transcripts of interviews with eligible U.S. candidates. Such interviews have been aired. So basically, they don't think they're in the wrong, but they're paying him off because he bullies people. He bullied them into $16 million. They just didn't want to go to court because they're getting ready to merge and they didn't want any fluff. So here it is. CBS denied the allegations, saying the edits were routine. Wow. The unedited footage confirmed that Harris was accurately quoted. So they're giving him $16 million just to shut him up. $16 million. I'll say that again. This is how he does, guys. Sue, sue, sue. Until people can't pay anymore. And either they're going to drop the case or he's going to get paid. In this case, he got paid. Wow. Now, I want y'all to listen to this video here on the whole Joe Biden thing, the book that Jake Tapper wrote. You know, I got real upset about that book. And Jake Tapper, you know, you had a short-lived book tour, guys, because nobody buying this stupid book because you were wrong. While all this stuff is going on with Trump, that's the story you want to talk about? That's the story? Joe Biden's not the president anymore. So Katie Couric, she interviewed Jasmine Crockett on her podcast, and Jasmine, to me, has given the best answer as to why she stayed with Joe Biden. Now, this is the kind of stuff that Jake didn't cover. You know, they just wanted to paint him as like we had a president that was not coherent and therefore we weren't safe. Joe Biden had plenty of people around him that take up the slack if he was, but he wasn't. So I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried at all. So let's listen to this. This is from Jasmine. She did this really, really good, and I like her answer. Here we go.
This guy must be honest. Who would say half of these things unless they're being honest, right? Like, because he says the craziest things and does the craziest things. So it was read as honesty, and they would even give him passes for things that are completely inappropriate because they'd say, oh, well, I mean, at least he's being honest, right? At least I know what I'm getting with him. And it's like, no, you don't. And now you're finding out.
I want to talk more about the Trump administration, but I will also want to talk about President Biden, because when other people were pressuring him to step down, even when your caucus was wavering, you stood firmly behind him.
Did.
And I'm curious how you feel with some of these revelations about his sort of decline in energy and perhaps even mental acuity that we've been reading about, and if it's given you any pause and any regret.
Not a single one. I still stand by the decision to stand with President Joe Biden and then ultimately standing with Vice President Kamala Harris. And I'll tell you why. The average person has not been given the level of access that the average member of Congress has to the president. I never saw anything in Joe Biden that made me wonder whatsoever. And it's not that I was with Joe Biden every single day, that's for sure. But as I talked about my grandparents, the way that I would describe Joe is like, I mean, he's a granddaddy, right? And so like, you know, the way that my granny was when she was younger versus ultimately kind of where she was at 81 when she ended up passing away. Mentally, she was still there, but like her attitude about certain things, like whether or not she was looking to be as polished or cared to be as polished, or even if she moved as fast, it just wasn't there. We all slow down. But I will tell you that I will take a broken, or however they want to describe Joe Biden, over Donald Trump any given day. Because number one, I know Joe Biden's heart. And I can tell you that when you look at the legislation that he was able to push forward with, this wasn't legislation that was about him and his rich friends. It was legislation that was for the good of the American people. And when you look at the people that he surrounded himself with, even if you're saying that there was a mentally deficient Joe Biden, I know that he absolutely had a mental acuity that is supreme when it comes to comparing him to Donald Trump, because at least he kept good people around him. He kept people that would keep us safe in this country. He kept people that would make sure that even as tensions were rising all around the world, that we were keeping those tempered. He was able to understand, with his level of mental acuity, who our friends were. He was not getting us into unwarranted tariff wars and things like that. So even if we want to say, which I refuse to accept, that Joe Biden was mentally deficient, let me tell you something. His mental deficiency is still 1,000 times better than what we currently have. And so, I just wish that ultimately this country would judge each of our leaders with the same measuring stick. We do not. There was a lot of pressure that was put on Joe Biden. There were a lot of criticisms that were lodged at him, as well as Kamala Harris. Now, the question is, why is it that none of these critiques came about for Joe Biden? For Donald Trump, right? Because when you think about it, Kamala Harris, light years ahead of Donald Trump as it relates to qualifications, as it relates to her overall resume, and as it relates to the fact that she was a lot younger. Everybody said that they wanted to get rid of Joe Biden because he was too old. Then you had a younger, qualified, non-felon candidate, and somehow the people still chose the old white man. So for me, I don't think it was ever about that. I think Democrats have, for a very long time, allowed Republicans to play them. So essentially, Republicans came up with a narrative and Democrats decided to play into that. And that only hurt the Democrats, because ultimately they still went with a very old man, right?
And what was the narrative, you think?
The narrative was that Joe Biden was too old and that he was senile, right? That was the narrative that the Republicans went with, and the Democrats picked up on it and bought it. Think about the number of resignations that we've seen out of Democrats, right? One person gets accused of something, they're like, oh, you got to step down. Just an accusation, right? And it's usually the right will kind of fuel it because they know the Democrats will eat their own. And it's not to say that we shouldn't have standards, but it is to say that we should understand when we're being played. And so I kept saying we stand by Joe Biden because he has a record to run on. Now, whether or not we were getting out there and communicating effectively about that record, I say we didn't. And I say that it had to be a team sport. It couldn't just be that, we were relying on the president to get all the information out. It was incumbent upon us. We were supposed to go into our districts with these big fake checks and make sure all the local media was there. And we talk about the investments that were being made and make sure that they knew Joe Biden did this. That new facility, Joe Biden did that. It was up to us to really be good partners.
And you don't think Democrats were?
I don't think that we were. Instead, if we spent half as much time beating down Joe Biden as we did uplifting all that was accomplished, and it got accomplished in only 2 years because he only had the House and the Senate for 2 years. Ultimately, when the history books are written, he will go down as a very accomplished president, as one of our best presidents. But if people don't know, if we're not communicating, then it's almost like we didn't do anything. And I still think that we are struggling with figuring out how to communicate out to the general public.
Let me ask you.
Wow. All right, so that was by far the best answer I've ever heard of any person that's asked about Joe Biden and the whole supposedly cover up the Democrats were doing on that, which is just a stupid story. It's not even a good story. Nobody cares about that. I just want y'all to leave Joe alone. Leave him alone. And Dear Jake Tapper, the book, it's still whack. Still whack. You shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. And I know it didn't do that good because I've been watching the numbers. Hadn't done that good, Joe. It hadn't done that good, Jake. Nope, it hasn't. We know it. But we tried to tell you. But that's what y'all want to do, CNN. Okay, so this is so funny, the next one, because I love this education secretary because she's so dense. She's the ex-wrestling lady. But listen as this congresswoman just humiliates her to no end. This is some of the Trump's great cabinet. Our Department of Education Secretary. My goodness.
You the answer you want.
No, I want the answer, whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no. So let's talk about so-called illegal DEI, as you all have called it, a phrase you continually bring up, that I'm still unclear on, especially after 3 federal judges have preliminarily ruled that your illegal DEI guidance is likely unconstitutional and unenforceable, illegal, as it were. Secretary McMahon, during your confirmation hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African-American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
I don't know what both sides of African-American history would be. Would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like,
that was a specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an incredibly specific example.
I named your questions, and I will look into it and get back to you on them.
Thank you. How about a school having a voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that
voluntary.
Well, let's make sure that in our schools,
this is yes or no?
We're looking. No, it's not.
Okay. How about social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election?
I think our studies should all be taught accurately.
Yes or no?
I think our studies should
No. The question was, do you believe that social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election is an illegal DEI? Yes or no?
I think I have said we should teach accurately. We should.
No, you have not answered the question. Well, I don't understand why you're incapable of answering.
I'm just not giving you the answer you want.
No, I want the answer, whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no.
No, the answer is
the answer is yes or no.
Gentlelady. Did y'all hear that? They will not say that Donald Trump didn't win the 2020 election. This is like these people have been brainwashed. I think it needs to be taught accurately. What does that mean? They won't say it, but they don't believe it, but they won't say it. You know what I mean? If you really believe that and stood behind it, you would say he did win the election. Matter of fact, say it. What are you afraid of? She's just, oh my God. That is like the worst pick. One of the top of the worst picks ever. All she is a Trump loyalist. I'm sorry. All right, so now I want to do this last segment, but I want to talk about it a little bit because, guys, here we are.
You the answer you want.
No, I want the answer, whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no. So let's talk about so-called illegal DEI, as you all have called it, a phrase you can.
Okay, I'm sorry. She came back on again, but that was so funny. So what I wanted to talk about here, though, guys, is wow, here we are as Americans having to live out a nightmare of Donald Trump's term as president. And then we have looming under us the possibility that this election possibly could have been stolen by him. It could have been stolen. It could have been, there was election interference. And there's several groups that have been auditing the election. Not voter fraud, there's a difference. Yeah, so let me tell you the difference between voter fraud and election. So let's see if I can find that slide here. Voter manipulation versus election interference. I think this is it. Okay. Voter manipulation is, in this report, we use the term vote manipulation to mean tampering with cast votes in such a way that votes are added, removed, or switched. When vote manipulation occurs, someone who is not the voter is directly altering vote counts. This is in comparison to election interference, which we use to refer to efforts to change the outcome of an election, specifically by illegitimate means without directly tampering with votes that have already been cast. All right, so that's the difference. Examples of vote manipulation could be ballot stuffing, deleting votes, or using an algorithm to switch votes. Examples of election interference could include paying people to vote, voter intimidation, or attempts by government to influence election outcomes in another country. So you see the difference here? One is deleting votes, or, you know what I mean? Even though the ballots are all there, you can go to count them, but if you don't do the matchup, they could very easily get away with some of this stuff, all right? So this study by the Election Alliance Group, and you can go to their website, electionsalliance.com or .org, whatever it is, and you can read all these studies, guys, all of these studies. So here's what's been going on now. They've been doing a study on Pennsylvania. Yeah, so this thing is showing up in all of these swing states. Yes, swing states versus non-swing states. So let me just go through here. Now, what's been happening in these swing states, guys, is something called drop-off voting. Drop-off voting. Let me tell you what drop-off voting is so that you know what that means. Okay, drop-off voting. Let me get that other one off of here. All right, the term drop-off votes refers to votes cast for a presidential candidate versus votes cast for a down ballot candidate of the same party. The term highlights the number of voters who voted for president but skipped voting in lower races like the Senate or House races. In our analysis of Clark County, the drop-off rate is measured between the votes for the presidential race and the Nevada Senate race, which was Jackie Rosen, Democrat, against Sam Brown, Republican. The drop-off rate is calculated by finding the difference between the number of votes cast for presidents and the votes cast for the Senate, and then dividing this by the total number of presidential votes for each party. While some drop-off between the president and down ballots is expected, Smart Elections, a nonpartisan group focused on election security, notes that the U.S. presidential election drop-off rates were very different on the Republican versus the Democrat side. Drop-off rates for the Republican side were very high, whereas the drop-off rates for the Democratic side were quite low or even into the negative. Does that make sense? They also found that drop-off rates in swing states tend to be significantly higher compared to non-swing states. So this is like only happening in where it mattered. Are y'all with me on this? Are y'all with me on this? So let me see. So let's see. In the state of Pennsylvania, the Election Truth Alliance Group is advocating for increased transparency around the 2024 U.S. presidential election results. The specific reference to vote counting computers in this context is concerning, says Nathan Taylor, ET, the executive director. Vote tabulators are essentially ballot counting machines that are a critical part of America's election infrastructure. Some are built in, others are standalone systems. Tabulators can scan and interpret ballots, store ballot images, and add vote totals. If tabulators have been compromised, we have a huge problem with the integrity of election. So basically they're talking about, you know, after you vote and you get your little card, if you have this kind of voting machine and you go and you slide your little card over there, that machine is the one that does the totals and things of that nature. Something was happening with those, okay, is what they were saying. Something was happening with those machines that you slide the vote in, it wasn't counting things right, and it was doing some crazy stuff, all right? So that's what's going on in Pennsylvania. Now, drop-off votes by formats. Let's look at this one. So, the drop-off votes. While the difference in drop-off rates between the two candidates is similar for mail-in voting, there is a distinct difference in drop-off rate between the candidates election day itself. 0.087% versus 4.5%. So this drop-off only happened on early voting, but on election day, it didn't happen. Does that make sense? No. Overall, in Pennsylvania, Harris received a total of 38,862 votes, more votes than Democratic Senator Robert Casey Jr. for a drop-off rate of 1.14%. Trump's total was substantially higher, 114,000 more votes than Republican challenger Dave McCormick. So they're saying that 114,013 people came in and voted only for Trump. But for Kamala Harris, only 38,000. So you see what I mean? There was a lot of that single voting that happened. And this is consistent all over the country, guys. It's all over the country. Yeah. So let's see. Let me see. Clark County drop-off percentages. Let's look at that total. Now, this is for Clark County, Nevada. Now, the total drop-off votes for Trump versus Harris. All right, so I should say Democrat versus Republican. Democrats for Harris only had 5,541. So we're saying there are some people that come in and all they do is vote for president because they probably don't know how to work the voting machines. They don't want to do anything else. They just want to vote for president. That happens. But it only happened for Kamala Harris 5,541 times. Drop off votes. But for Donald Trump, 51,945 people came in and just voted for Donald Trump, and that's it? No. In heavily Democratic Clark County, Nevada, that's where Las Vegas is. No. Didn't happen. This is consistent in all the swing states. And not on election day, but on early voting. Do y'all get that? Okay, so that's what's happening right there. Now let's see what else do I have on here. Let's see on the Penn counties. So this little chart here for Pennsylvania counties, y'all see how this graph looks here, and the graph, guys, if you look at the graph, in a normal election, there are no candidates that are way in the negative like Kamala Harris was on all of this stuff in Pennsylvania. This graph should not look like this. If you look at this graph, the contrast between drop-off rates for Harris and Trump becomes stark when each county in the state is broken out separately. While Harris receives a positive drop-off rate in a few counties and Trump receives a negative drop-off rate in one county, the overall trend remains. The two charts take the total votes for each county across Pennsylvania counties and separates them into mail-in drop-off rates by county versus election day. When the election day votes are isolated, Trump's drop-off rate is drastically higher on election day, while Harris's is drastically lower. So they spread this crap around. This is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, it is really, really crazy. So here's a county map of Pennsylvania. Counties that reported voting system malfunctions display Democratic drop-off trend. Look at all these counties. So guys, I'm doing all this to say, why won't anybody pay attention to this? You know, it's because we're mad. American people, we're mad because the way that Kamala Harris's rallies looked and Donald Trump's rallies were looking, the way that Kamala had just had this momentum, all these people were showing up, this doesn't make sense to us. And if this election was manipulated by Donald Trump, and I'm suspecting Elon has something to do with it, and he's president because of it, we, the American people, we want answers. We want answers, and we want it now. So I am hoping that the Rockland, New York study where a judge has allowed them to do an audit. In September, they're supposed to have an answer for us. I hope that tells something that will make it become a nationwide look at all of these states. Because having to live under Donald Trump's regime, and he's been able to just do all this stuff, and then to know the fact that they may have cheated on the election, that makes me very angry. And it should make you angry as well. But until this gets to mainstream news, there's not much we can do. Not much we can do. All right, guys. So I know this has been a long podcast, but there's a lot been going on in this country. If you haven't read about this bill, guys, it's going to make some changes for you. And all you guys are thinking that they've done everything, tax on tips, it's not permanent. It's only for like a couple of years, and it's maxed at a certain area, maxed at a certain percentage. But the wealthy tax, that's forever. Do y'all see what I'm saying? Those are just little strawberries he threw in there to make him think he was doing something for the people. They're not doing anything for the people in this bill. There's nothing for the people in this bill. Except the little tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and those are limited. Okay. I guess that's going to be the end of this podcast, but I'm going to be posting a lot of clips from this podcast, and I want you to get into the comments. Tell me what you feel about what's going on here in America. Tell me what you feel, and I want to hear from both sides. I mean, if you want to talk about what you believe Donald Trump is doing right, we can talk about it. You know, I'm going to give you my opinion, and hopefully you'll listen. But yeah, this is not good, guys, and I will continue to do these kind of podcasts until somebody's listening and somebody's doing something about what Donald Trump is doing to our country. So, guys, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking and stay abreast of the news and what's happening. Don't let things happen that you could have put your voice to. All right? So thank you so much for joining me for episode 41 of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. You can listen to this podcast wherever your podcasts you'd like to listen to on any of the podcast platforms. And if you want to see it visually, please check out my YouTube channel. All the links will be listed here with this podcast. All right? Have a wonderful day. Bye now.